Hello, this is Dr. Stanley Lang, and welcome to this presentation on a whole person health approach to the treatment of depression and anxiety. This is just a brief overview, and I'm going to tell you about a patient encounter that I had. And the context is as I said, a whole person health or a holistic approach, which means health of body, mind, and spirit for the treatment of depression and anxiety. So I saw a patient a couple days ago who has been having severe depression. From her perspective, would qualify technically as mild to moderate depression by usual medical guidelines for about 2 to 3 months. And she sounded like she would do anything she could to get better initially. So she was feeling desperate to feel better. And as we talked about the options, though, it became apparent that she didn't want to do several of the natural things that she could do to overcome her depression. And as she had sort of thought about how she might get over it, it became clearer that her goal was to get a medication to treat the depression. And she was open to doing some other things, but she really was hoping to just be able to take a pill to overcome the depression once she heard what the natural strategies would look like. So what do the natural strategies look like? Well, they have a whole person health approach, meaning that each one of these areas, physical, emotional, spiritual, have a component to improving the odds of overcoming depression. With this approach, I see about a 90% improvement in treating mild to moderate depression without medication. And so from the physical perspective, the most important part of the physical aspect of this triangle is daily exercise. So a 30-minute vigorous walk is sort of foundational strategy to overcoming depression and anxiety using natural means. Secondarily, it's critical to be eating in a way that doesn't provoke your brain to having all sorts of abnormal bouncing around of the chemicals in the brain, which are called neurotransmitters. So the way that most people provoke their brain to this bouncing around stuff is by eating foods that are converted to sugar a lot. And we call those kind of foods high glycemic carbs. And by eating high glycemic carbs on a regular basis, that will cause and aggravate any kind of mental instability that's going on. And by definition, if you're feeling depressed or you're having anxiety episodes, there's some instability in the brain chemistry. And by controlling the kind of calories that are coming into the body and how they affect the blood sugar, you indirectly affect brain chemistry a lot. Third are the toxins that are in the foods that allow other toxins to get through the gut lining and go to the brain and affect it in an adverse way. Now, these toxins are primarily the herbicide that is found in a lot of different foods that we eat, which is called glyphosate. And by limiting glyphosate exposure, that's a really critical part of this natural approach to overcoming depression and anxiety. So on the emotional side, there are 3 critical things that people need to do and some other things that they can do. The critical things are 3 main relationships. Number 1 is working on family relationships on a daily basis. Now, that doesn't mean spending lots and lots of time. It means investing at least a little bit of time on a daily basis. Number 2, working on friendship relationships at least once a week, where you're building up the relationship. And number 3, building a relationship with God if you don't have one, or building one up if you do have one. Now, the third area is the spiritual part. Now, I've already alluded to that by talking about building up your relationship with God. And so having a prayer time that is effective is really helpful. So the most effective prayer strategy for somebody who is in the midst of anxiety and depression is a prayer form that I call the Jesus Prayer, which I teach in the program that I've developed as part of this holistic approach. The Jesus Prayer has been around since the 1st century, so I didn't develop the Jesus Prayer, just how to integrate it into this holistic approach. But part of the the spiritual approach for wellness also includes two disciplines. One discipline is working hard at forgiving the people, including yourself, that you have anger and resentment aimed at. The second is working to build up a habit of thanksgiving through the day, thanksgiving and contentment for what God has already given you. So this is an overview of the strategies that could help 90% plus of people overcome their mild to moderate depression. However, that was too much for this particular patient. She didn't want to do all that stuff. So particularly, she didn't want to even do an exercise program, although she was willing to change her diet. But she mainly wanted some medication. She was a little bit open to prayer, but not too much. So she was sort of theoretically interested in a holistic approach until she understood what it was. So I've outlined to you what it is. And if you're interested in getting over your anxiety and depression without having to take medication, I can tell you that I see a 90+% recovery rate without medication using the strategies that I've just outlined for you. And if you want more information about the bigger program on how to do all this stuff, you can click on the link that you'll find below this video or on the video. So I wish you well, success in overcoming depression or anxiety if you have it, or avoiding it by doing these things in the first place. I wish you well. God bless and have a good day.